Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to change out a water pump on a Porsche 911S. So the first thing you need to do is lift the rear up and properly support it. To access, I like to remove the air box out. So you will take the bolt out, holding onto the rear, take your mass airflow electrical connection off, pull up your oil filter filler tube, remove your lines, take the clamp off so you can remove it off from the throttle body, and then take this side section off, and then it'll make it a whole lot easier to access. So once you get that stuff out of the way, you'll be able to clearly see the area down below. The water pump's actually down here. Now you can go ahead and remove the drive belt by getting a socket onto this pulley right here and pushing downward on it. Whenever you push downward, then it'll rotate and you can see it come loose right there, and you'll be able to take the belt off pretty easily, just like that, and then release the tension on there, and that's how you get the drive belt off. So the next thing you're going to want to do is remove the bracket for the exhaust support bracket right here, and then remove these two bolts in order to take the bracket off. Then you'll be working on loosening up the engine support bracket on the very back right here, but make sure that you do support the engine with a jack to keep the engine from dropping down. So you will need a 15mm wrench to get these two off, and then there'll be one right there, 15mm, and then you'll need an E10 socket, an inverted socket that looks like this right here, in order to get that one off. Then you'll come up top, right where the airbox would normally be sitting, and take a 15mm socket to remove the upper bolt. Makes it really easy with the airbox out. So once you get the E10 bolt out, then you can go ahead and remove this bracket and just set it off to the side. Now you might have to lift the engine slightly using the jack to release the pressure off from the rear mount. So if it doesn't come right off, then just lift the jack up a little bit, but you want to remove or pull back on the support bracket. You want to go ahead and remove your coolant hose off the bottom there to let any coolant out that hasn't already been removed. So once you get that lower hose disconnected, you can start removing the 10mm mounting bolts all the way around the water pump. When you remove the retaining nuts off from the rear engine support, the purpose is basically just to bring it far enough up, it'll probably hit the exhaust, but bring it far enough up just to give you a little gap big enough to get the water pump out. Now there's a couple bolts in there, like the one there in the corner, that's a pretty tough one to get out. I normally just use a 1/4" ratchet, and I get down there and I loosen it up. After I loosen it up, I usually get my hand in there and turn it towards the engine, and then reach down in here like this, and I'm able to reach it back in the corner, and then I unscrew it by hand, and then I bring it on up and get it out. So the other ones that's located underneath here, you can pretty much get with the 1/4" ratchet and the extension, but once you get everything loose, then you can go ahead and start trying to remove the water pump out. Wanted to kind of show you right here too that this water pump was so worn out that the pulley was rubbing this upper bolt, so I couldn't get a socket in there. But you'll just have to, if yours does the same thing, you'll just have to get a wrench in there and try to just start turning it a little bit at a time until you can get that bolt out of there. It usually doesn't take too much pressure to get the water pump out. As you can see, where this bolt right here is actually behind the pulley, and as I'm screwing it out, it's actually putting pressure on it, pushing it outward, and you can see where the water pump is separating off from the engine as that bolt is coming out. Now take an E12 socket and remove the pulley that's between the water pump and the crank. and remove that out of the way. Once that's out of the way, then you can bring the water pump up. You'll have to wiggle it around just a little bit. Get you a pry bar right off to the side right here and push back on the engine support bracket, and you'll be able to lift the water pump all the way up and out, and then put it to the side. So once the water pump's out, you're going to need to take a pair of dikes, and if you see the end of my screwdriver right here, you'll need to clip it right there, right above this bolt, and then right over here on this side over here, you'll need to snip the little tab right off there, and then there's another one right back behind this little tab right here. They'll need to be snipped. So if you have a tough time taking this off or snipping it off, then just stick a screwdriver up in here and put some pressure on there and kind of pull on it, and a lot of times it'll just break off, and then you come down here and go ahead and just kind of wedge on it and it'll break off. Now once you do get that removed, you want to make sure that the surface where the water pump was is clean, and you can take a little plastic scraper like this to scrub anything on there that might, any type of debris that might still be on it. So you want the mounting surface to be clean all the way around. So you want to compare the new water pump with the old water pump, make sure everything looks the same, the mounts, the fins and everything. So once everything looks good and you get the surface of the engine clean, then we'll go ahead and put the gasket on here and start putting the water pump back on. So when you go to put the water pump back in, it's basically the reverse process of removal. You'll set it up here, and whenever you start sliding it down in there, you'll have to get the pry bar and kind of put some pressure on the engine support bracket on the rear there, and kind of pull it back as you're sliding the water pump back in the hole. Just slowly get it back into place. Just take your time and get that top retaining bolt back in there. Now I did put a little bit of silicone on the gasket just to make sure that it stayed in place. Now if you weren't paying attention to the bolts whenever they came out, you do have a couple that are long. Majority of them are shorter. The two longer ones go on this side. It'll be the very far right one there, and then the very bottom one. And you can put the one back there in the corner back in the same way that you took it out. Just put your hand down in there, find the hole, stick the screw in it, and start spinning it with your fingers. After you've gotten it as far down with your fingers that you can twist, then go ahead and put your socket back on it and start tightening it back up. As you're tightening up the bolts for the water pump, make sure that you go in a crisscross pattern or a star type pattern all the way around, and don't snug it on too hard because they will strip out pretty easily. Whenever you're reinstalling the bolts for the water pump, to make sure that you put Loctite on them, and then whenever you tighten them down, they get torqued down to 8 Newton meters, or which comes out to about 6 foot-pounds, I believe. Put your pulley back on and tighten it up. Go ahead and get your belt back on. Make sure everything's lined up properly. Now you can go underneath and start reassembling the engine support bracket and the exhaust bracket. Go ahead and put your bolt in there. Start putting your bolts back together. Same thing with the upper one. You can go to the upper side to get the top one tightened up. As I showed you earlier, you can just come to the top side and reach down through here, put the nut back on there, and tighten it up. Now you just slide your ratchet down in here, and go ahead and tighten up the bolt, or ratcheting a wrench, and start tightening up that one down there. So once you get this other one tightened down on underneath here, you'll be able to put the exhaust bracket back on. Go ahead and just slide that up into place. You'll have to give it a little shove to get it back into the right position, and put your bolts back in it. After you get this tightened down, then you can go ahead and reattach your brackets on the outside and tighten those down on both sides right there. Once you get those all tightened down, then go ahead and put your coolant pipe back on the bottom. Now you're ready to start putting your airbox back in. Your airbox goes back in the same way that it came out. Just go ahead and slide it in there, and make sure you get your fan clamp up here or on the tube before you get it up there, so you can tighten that up. Once you get the airbox back in and get everything connected back up, then you'll go ahead and start filling up your antifreeze. Now when you're ready to put the antifreeze in, it does require the pink antifreeze. Now it's usually cheapest to just go to the dealership and buy it in this gallon jug instead of buying it in the smaller containers from the local parts store. This is concentrated, so you do need to mix it with distilled water. The easiest thing to do is to get you a water jug or a distilled water jug and have half the water in here, and then pour the other half full of the antifreeze, and that way you get a correct 50-50 mixture. So when you're filling the antifreeze, you'll need to put a vacuum on it like this in order to pull all the bubbles out of the system. So once you put the air on there and you start vacuuming it down about 23 inches, so we'll go ahead and connect the air supply. So here you can see that I'm sucking the system down. Now we'll stick the pipe down in the pre-mixed antifreeze, and then go ahead and reconnect it up here. And whenever you release the vacuum, it'll suck the antifreeze up into the reservoir and go ahead and fill up the system. Now, as you can see, the vacuum is going down. It's went down quite a bit, and you might need to pull the relief valve back here. But normally once it gets down close to zero, it's pretty much full. You can see it's still going in there. If you fill this bottle completely full of antifreeze and you try to put this vacuum pump on there, it'll squirt antifreeze out of it. So you want to leave it down a little ways and evacuate all the air out of the system. So you can see now that it's on zero, and pretty much the level is right where it needs to be. Right there is the minimum, right there is the maximum. Then you can go ahead and remove your tool out of the container, and you can see right there it's at the proper level. So after you've got all the air out of the system, then go ahead and put your cap back on the water reservoir over there, and then don't forget to put the rest of your intake back on. But other than that, that's how you change out your water pump on your Porsche 911. So anyway guys, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, like it, share it. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.